What's up everyone, Elden Ring's first big DLC, Shadow of the Erdtree, releases in just a few days. And with how level scaling is planning to work in this DLC, not only will content be harder than the main game where you can kind of just over-level stuff, there are actually going to be huge things you need to achieve in the main game before you can even start it. And that's what we're going to go over today, the bosses that you need to defeat to be able to start the DLC, and then some things that it would be a good idea to get done, and some things that you might not want to do before we get into Shadow of the Erdtree. So let's get straight into it. With first up, the big boss requirements. There are 2 bosses that they've confirmed you need to defeat to be able to even start the DLC, and one of them is quite late on in the game. So the first one you need to defeat is Scar Scourge Radan, one of the 5 shard bearers located in Khalid. If you haven't found him, you can start this fight fairly early from Redmane Castle. Now, the easiest way to start this fight is to start the Rani's questline at Rani's Rise. So you go here, you meet Rani the Witch, and you begin this quest. It takes you over a few different places, there's a few things you have to do, it takes you underground and then back up, and then it tells you about the Radan Festival, and this is how you start this event. You go to the Redmane Castle, you do the Radan Festival, and then you trigger this huge boss fight, and that's one of the requirements to get this guy beat. Now, the second boss that you absolutely must defeat in order to start the DLC is Mog the Lord of Blood. And this is not an early game boss. This is a later game boss. This is like level 100 plus, a pretty challenging boss in a pretty late game area. Now, the funny thing is, if you look at the Steam achievements, then less than 40% of people have even beat this boss. So there's quite a high wall, quite a high, bar to hit before you can even start the DLC. So a lot of people are going to have to get this done. This is like the #1 thing. If you take nothing else from this video, work towards getting this guy defeated before you even think about getting the DLC. So, okay, how do we do this? If you haven't unlocked this Mogwin Palace area where this boss is, there are 2 ways. There's Var's questline, and this person is, as you first start the game, you come out of the tutorial, you come into Limgrave, you get that big view for the first time. If you walk forward a little bit towards the bonfire, there is a person here that starts you on this quest. If this person isn't there, or you've messed it up, or for some reason you can't do this quest and you want to go there, another way to do this is to go through a hidden portal near the consecrated snowfields. So if you go up here in the very, very north of the map, then you head west from this bonfire. You go all the way west to this tower. You go around it. You drop down. There is a hidden portal. Now you'll go down to this portal and you'll get invaded. Defeat the invader, and the teleporter will unlock. You can go in it, and this will take you to the Mogwin zone. So you're there now, and that is how you kind of get here. And then once it's unlocked, you get a bonfire here, and you can then come back here whenever you want. Now the Lord of Blood is located there's something called the mausoleum entrance midpoint. This campfire here. And if you just run around the side from here, there's an elevator. That's how you get here. So it's fairly easy. There's a small zone. You just keep going up the hill and you'll get here fairly easily. But this is a challenging fight. I would recommend you be level 100 plus, depending on your build. Maybe you can choose it a bit easier with magic as a melee. Maybe you want to be like 100 plus. I found this okay at like 130. It was fine. So yeah, I tried to do this a little earlier at like 80, and I found it a little challenging. So make sure you're prepared for it. As you beat this guy, there is a hand that he's protecting. You can go and click the hand, and that will start the DLC, I believe. So that's what you need to do. Now let's talk about what else you should try and complete. Like, what should you try and achieve before you go there? What should you take with you? And potentially, what should you not do? So the first thing I would be worried about before going into this DLC, looking at the DLCs from other, Dark Souls games, is try and get your build in a good place. Try and get to a place where you're happy with your build. They've said that there is a separate leveling experience in Shadow of the Erdtree, so you won't be worrying about runes or upgrading yourself in that kind of way. However, now is a good time to get your general build complete. It would be good to try and hit certain caps so you can equip any of the new and exciting weapons. There's like new weapon types come in, or get your in or faith to a certain level so you can use the new spells that might be coming. The next thing would be, aside from just your build, try and farm any gear or trinkets that you might want or need to play better. So as there's going to be this tight scaling where we can't just like over level and overpower, it's good to get as much damage and use out of the things we can equip. So I'm planning to play an arcane bleed build in the DLC. So on this character, I went and got the white mask for extra bleed damage, the Lord of Blood's talisman, things like that. But yeah, people have been making builds for Elden Ring for years, and there's so many good people out there that have made really good lists of the best things for each build. So I'm sure you can find a good resources out there for what you might need and just start hunting them down before you step into the DLC. Another good thing would be just making sure your core things for your build are done as well, like get all your talismans unlocked. Make sure you've got all the memory slots so you can equip extra spells. Make sure that you've got the Art of Wars ready so that you can go in and use the things for your build that you need. Just anything from the base game, just go and get it. Another thing that would be good to do is go and farm the bosses and the optional bosses for any weapons or spells that you want to get stronger. You already know the DLC is going to be harder than the main game, so now's a good time to go and get the spells and weapons locked behind those bosses and take them in with us, like dragons for dragon magic, certain magical bosses like Renala for powerful spells, or bosses like Melania for their sword. If you've beaten the base game or you've got close, you should be able to plus 10 or plus 25 all those weapons as well. We're not sure how the scaling is going to work in the DLC, but if you have the materials, you may as well upgrade them before you go in. And then the final thing would be to have a little trek around the map and collect all the golden seeds and sacred tears to make sure you have a decent stack of healing. And that's kind of the main big ticket things. There's lots of other things. There's tons of side quests, NPC quests. You could go and get all of the different mausoleums. So those are things you could try and do, but they're the things that I think are really, really important to make sure you have a really good start. Now for some things that maybe you shouldn't do, some things you should probably avoid or be careful of if you try and do it before you go into the DLC. Now the first one, if you're trying to beat the game, I'd avoid starting a New Game Plus. You can beat the game and you can go all the way to the final boss, you can beat the final boss, and then you can choose not to start a New Game Plus. I would do that. You can then start a New Game Plus later on at your own time. This will be a really good way for jumping into the DLC. You'll be at a very high level, you'll be over 100, you'll have really good gear, fully upgraded gear, and you'll feel very powerful in your base world. If you start the DLC, then you're going to go in there feeling quite strong and with the best of your ability. Now, if you were to start New Game Plus, that makes everything harder. That's the whole point of New Game Plus. The whole game gets harder. Now, there's a worry that when you start the DLC and you step in there on New Game Plus, all of those enemies have that increased difficulty on them as well, making it a much harder experience for your first time in there. So that's if you're a bit nervous, I wouldn't start a New Game Plus. I just try and get as far through the game as you can and then just go in on your juiced out character. The next thing you want to probably try and avoid is over leveling. Now we've heard about this new resource to help us power up in the DLC, and that things will scale to us around that. So if you're trying to hit a really high level, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be putting lots of points into your stats that are over the soft cap. So the way soft cap works is like, so for example, your first 60 points in something might give you a bunch of that resource. So for example, if you put loads of points in health and you get tons of health from it, once you hit the soft cap and you go over that, you're not getting as much health per point. So the problem you're going to have there is you're going to keep leveling, you're going to keep putting points in, but you're not gaining as much as you are before. So when you go into this New Game Plus, everything's going to scale to your really high level, but you might have been better off going in at a really min-maxed level. So hit the soft caps on what you need. Like I'm going in Dex Arcane, I'm going to hit a fairly good like 60 Arcane maybe, and I'm going to stop there for the DLC. I could take it all the way to 100, but the fall off might make it actually harder. But yeah, that's it. That's everything you need to do, things that you might want to do, and then some things potentially to avoid. But yeah, that's it for this video. I won't ramble on. I hope this has helped. If you have any other tips or any other things that have been missed here, let people know down below in the comments. And thank you for watching. If you like this style of guide, do consider subscribing to the channel. But that's it from me. Take care. If you're watching this in a few days, you'll already be deep in the shadow of the Erdtree. So enjoy, take care, and I'll catch you in the next one.